So, not all election results are in yet. It seems that we really need a lot of help these days with doing basic addition calculations with voting. But anyway, that's not my point. My point today is everyone's asking on all sides of politics and on all sides of media, left-leaning, right-leaning, what happened to the red wave? The pollsters were all predicting a big red Republican wave, but there's really been just a bit of a trickle. One place there was a wave, possibly a tsunami. Florida, traditionally a purple state, swing state, it has gone hard red. Is that, because of Governor DeSantis and his, really willingness to take the punches for standing up against the socialist-driven woke agenda? Could it be because of his election integrity bill that was passed earlier this year that made sure the will of the people was actually truly reflected in the vote counting? Well, I have a wonderful guest today who can answer these burning questions that I have. Dr. Doug Bankson has just won his race as House Representative in Florida District 39, and you are going to want to hear everything he has to say about the race, the state, and how it affects the nation. Please stay tuned. You are watching the Today with Kay show, and I'm Kay Rubacek. How is your coffee supply? Is your coffee really 100% organic and roasted right here in the US? Well, Freedom First Coffee is. It's a gourmet coffee roasted in Victorian-era roasters in the heartland of the USA. Their tagline is, tastes like freedom. I do not know what freedom flavor exactly really is, but I can say it tastes great. I drink it myself. I would like to invite you to give it a try. Go to freedomfirstcoffee.com. That's freedomfirstcoffee.com. Use the promo code K, K-A-Y, for a discount. And that will also support this show. I like to say we vote with our dollars, so buying your coffee from Freedom First Coffee is a delicious way to vote for freedom. And if you already have your own favorite coffee supply, don't worry, because you can buy me a coffee. Go to my website, kayrubacek.com. That's KAYRUBACEK.com. And there you can actually download my latest book for free. It's called Nowhere Left to Run, 10 Steps to Survive Tyranny Today. I wanted to put that out for free, and that's why I added the Coffee with K button, where you can buy me a virtual coffee to help me keep being able to put out more content like this. I appreciate you all for all the support that you've given me and all the encouragement. It helps me keep going, and I hope that I can do the same for you too. Dr. Doug Bankson, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you have a very busy day ahead of you. There's a storm coming to Florida. You're preparing. Credit to you to go out and you're picking up the campaign signs now so they don't become missiles. This is true government service in action. I love it. How are you feeling today? Congratulations on your win in your district. And were there any surprises or anything unexpected for you?
Well, actually, we really felt good going into it. The polling was looking good and everything, but I tell people I don't quit till I bounce off the backside of heaven. So we campaigned strong and hard, and we were we were behind in our district here, and so the party really wanted us to win this one, and we had an amazing team. I always say it is a team effort and a team win. And so we're just so elated, but we had some really good numbers. I was pleased that our numbers were as well as they were in a district that we were typically behind in. So it's...
Yeah, so you're in District 39 in
Yes.
Florida, and this district, from what I saw, it has almost exactly the same number of registered Republicans as registered Democrats. So
A little bit more on the Democrat side, but pretty close.
Okay, so pretty close, but even, a little bit against you. And what do you think pushed you over the edge with your campaign?
Well, I think, again, we worked very hard. We didn't take anything for granted. We do a good ground game. Of course, we got a lot of direct digital. We tried to get the message out, but I just love talking to voters face to face. And for me, when we would go and knock on the doors and I'd be able to talk with them, they could just resonate. There were so many, whether they were Republican, Democrat, or no party affiliation. Everyone was feeling the same crunch economically, the failed policies that we have nationally. And we're just so tired of seeing our economy just going down, down, down on the national level, and gas prices and food and everything else going up, up, up. And of course, we know that the inflation is driving all of these things. So they could resonate with that. And then, of course, our local issues here in Florida, as we're facing another hurricane here, we do have an insurance crisis. I hate using that term because politicians throw that out all the time. But basically, our insurance rates here are just doubling and skyrocketing. Companies are having to leave the state. And so we've got to close some of the loopholes where some are gaming the system a bit. So we're going to jump right on that. But people would resonate with that. And then education. And that, to me, is foundational. And when we won the primary, we went up to Tallahassee and had a meeting together with all the primary winners. And they had each of us just share why we were in the race and these different things. And I got up and I shared with them. I said, we can pass the greatest legislation that we want. But if we lose our kids, it's over as a nation, because they're being indoctrinated and they'll flip over any good gains that we make. So we've got to take our education system back. And in Florida, we have a wonderful opportunity of school choice. And we're on the heels of Arizona when it comes to making sure that's across the board. And that's something that everyone across the board related to. And so just dealing with those issues, either side of the aisle, they were ready to jump in and support us.
So, and it sounds like, the impression I'm getting from you is that you're ready to jump in right away and get into these issues and resolving some of these things that you've been talking about, because people are caring about it. What's your first actions going to be?
Yeah, well, again, you're exactly right. Last night, after we were going nonstop, I thought I would be exhausted, but I was just exhilarated with the opportunity. And I'm just like, let's get to work. And one of the first things I'm going to do, because as a representative, of course, we've got to remember that we're servant leaders and we represent the voice of the people. So I already having served for 6 years as a city commissioner and a vice mayor here in our locality, I already have an understanding of our district somewhat, but I want to go to all of the different municipalities and ask them for their top 3 priorities. And so I'll be meeting with them within this week, begin to lay out the groundwork. And then there are these overriding issues. Again, number one with this being our insurance crisis. And thankfully, our wonderful, great governor in the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, he's already called for special session in the first week of December. So we are going to hit the ground running and begin to address this head on and make sure to curb this that is really overburdening the people.
Okay, hitting the ground running. Friends, for you watching out there, take note of what is happening in Florida. We are going to be back to talk more about the state in just a moment. You are listening to an interview with Dr. Doug Bankson. I'm Kay Rubacek, and this is the Today with Kay show. Gold, 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 gold. Have you heard that before? If you haven't been paying attention. We are heading into a recession. It is inevitable. It is a really serious financial crisis. Many people have known this is coming for a long time. The financial analysts who are finally actually talking about it are saying it's going to be a lot worse than they expected. They knew it was coming. Come on. But are you prepared? If you are not, it's not too late. If you want to use gold as a way to secure your assets, you need to talk to someone you can trust, someone who knows the financial industry. Don't talk to a podcaster like me. I know communism and socialism, and I know the economics of that, but I don't know how to invest in gold. You got to talk to an expert. I trust Ira at ourgoldguy.com. Do whatever you can to protect yourself for the upcoming financial crisis. You've got an idea of what's coming. No one knows exactly how bad it's going to be, but now is the time to prepare. Go to ourgoldguy.com, talk to Ira, and mention my name, Kay. What are you seeing across the state of Florida that's different to the rest of the country? Because we've just seen a massive red wave across Florida, but we didn't see the red wave that many were predicting across the entire nation. Why do you think Florida is different?
Well, again, it goes back to leadership. And I've always said that you can either lead or be liked, but you can't always have both. And thankfully, we have a governor that has led. With the whole issue with our COVID 19 and all of the mandates and government overreach, he finally looked at the science, stood up to this, and said, no, enough's enough. We're going to open up for business because this is more than just dealing with COVID 19. It's the crush on our children. They're falling behind. It's the crush on the businesses. Literally, it's collapsing the strongest nation in the world. And so he stood up against those things, and with a lot of headwind, he just didn't listen to that and basically made some bold decisions that were based on sound fact. And because of that, we begin to come out of that, the oppressive state, and people begin to feel the freedom. And we have people moving from all parts of the nation to Florida. Over 1,200 a day are moving here. And we just say, we welcome you, but please don't bring your politics here. And people are excited about this, again, across the spectrum. And I've had people from the other party across the table saying, how do I switch parties? Because they're tired of seeing all of this. The other great issue is the Hispanic vote. And of course, we have much of that from South Florida. We have those who, of course, have come from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, South America, and Mexico as well. And because the Hispanic people are a very familial people, they love family. They understand the importance and the value of family. And when our schools begin to be under attack with the indoctrination, our kids begin to be just guinea pigs. And it's like, no, enough's enough. And so thankfully, our governor stood up again, and we made some bold moves to say, no, you're not going to continue to teach these things here. This is not something that's without compassion for people who struggle, but neither should everyone be forced to receive an ideology that is not supported by science. It's not supported by history. It's failing, and it's destroying families, along with the Black Lives Matter movement that took a genuine cry, which is we want people to understand we do feel disenfranchised. And I have many Black friends who have gone through situations like that. Being in the South, I was born in Southern California, and so I wasn't used to as much as what happened here. I read about it, heard about it in school, but here, the stories that are there, you can understand the trouble and the issues and the things that they have directly felt. But what's wrong is this Marxist group took a hold of that, grabbed the emotion of that, and began to run with that. And one of their foundational doctrines was to destroy the family. So as people begin to see this happening, they said, enough's enough. These are our children. This is our family. And again, the Hispanic people historically have been a very God-fearing people. We see the Catholic influence so strong in South America. And because of that, just that God-fearing attitude, they don't want God to be just pushed off to the side. And so based upon those things, I believe what I think is interesting, that the Democratic Party meant to use this to switch the balance of power. And what they've really done, now that they're beginning to come alive politically, they're switching over and saying, oh no, we are not going to be your puppets, and we are standing strong. We're also seeing this in the African American community as well. People are waking up. And that's why, again, for me, the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln and the party of Frederick Douglass. And we've always stood for true liberty. Everyone is deserving of respect as a human being, but we don't have to respect all ideas equally. And so based upon that, I think getting out there and, again, just talking with people, the more we have people educated and understanding what the truth is, the more their eyes are beginning to open up. And I think that's what we're seeing in Florida. And we hope will truly be a wave that continues across the nation.
Oh, I like the sound of that, continuing that wave, because it's really fascinating that even Miami-Dade, so that district, Miami Beach, if you've been to Miami Beach, Miami City, in South Florida, you're probably aware it's very Hispanic. I have a lot of friends there, but these are people who have very, very, so many of them have escaped socialist Marxist regimes in other countries. For the past week in Brazil, there have been millions of people literally on the streets who have been protesting unfair, what they say are unfair elections in Brazil. So they have a history of seeing their freedoms being taken away from them, which is why so many of them came to America from Cuba, from Venezuela, from Brazil. And so, but they were historically voting Democrat generally, weren't they? And with Miami-Dade, it's the first time in how long that they've actually flipped to a Republican vote. What do you think about
Well,
that?
what's interesting is the Spanish word, I believe, is democracia or democratia. And literally, when they would come to the States, they would be met by Democrats and say, well, you see, you are a Democrat. And so they embraced that. And it got into the culture that, yes, we stand for democracy, therefore we're Democrat. But again, you hit it the nail on the head. The socialism that they have fled from, that they're escaping, they're beginning to see it come into this great nation that they, so many paid a high price to be able to get here and stand in line and be able to enter legally. And all of their voices are like, we don't want this to be overwhelmed, by the open border policies that we have no idea who is coming across the border. We're not an anti-immigrant state or nation. We're the melting pot. But I have a front door on my home. I'm a husband and father, grandfather. I'm responsible to guard the gates. And every politician has a duty, responsibility to make sure we know who is coming in. So even the Hispanic community, they are standing strong upon that because they love America. They love liberty, and they know and have seen firsthand the damage and destruction that socialism does. And so they're ready to say, no, we're not going to have it here. That's what we fled from, and we're not going to allow it here.
And isn't that fantastic that they are recognizing? I think your example was really quite a clear example when you talk about how foreigners, immigrants coming correctly in a due process into the nation being told that you should be voting for the Democrat Party because the word Democrat is part of your language for democracy, which is what you want. But now it's taken time for people to realize what the parties actually stand for, and not just to take language on the surface. I think too often this is what Marxism, it's a strategy that Marxism employs everywhere. You can see it very clearly in countries like China and certainly Venezuela and Cuba, where they'll take a term, give it, politicize it, and make you feel that you have to follow that term. Otherwise, there is no other way for you to really exist, because you have to be, like, for example, you have to be a Democrat if you're an immigrant. But now people are starting to see through those. That's just not true. It's not true. It's a lie. It's a falsehood that we've been told, and then they can actually get back to their values. And as you said, these Latin American countries very much are so much conservative, Christian-based foundations. Largely, over in Brazil, more than 90% of the citizens are of some form of faith, Christianity largely, and that's what they're looking for here, it seems. And now people are starting to actually vote for their values. Now, in Florida, Governor DeSantis has not only stood up for against illegal immigration, he's also stood up for election integrity, and I think that may have changed the wave in Florida and allowed it to be so large. That's a guess that I have, because we're not seeing that in other states. We didn't see other governors take such a hard line in many states against possible election anomalies. And look at what's happened in Florida. How much do you think this played a role in really showing what the people really want?
Being unafraid of what others would say, he simply followed the law and enforced the law. And those who were not willing to, he removed them. And I think this has, I think, been the problem for the Republican Party for the most part. Many times we've been too timid. Again, a peace-loving people. They're not looking for arguments. They just want to have, be able to go to work, take care of their families, live their life dream. But the Republican Party is beginning to wake up. Now, we don't have to be hateful, but we do need to be bold. And so I think the governor's leadership in that, being bold to say, no, we're not going to allow that which will undermine our very system. And I think to a great degree has caused those who typically before have been able to slide under the radar realize, wait a minute, we can't get rid of this. And on both sides of the aisle, there are Republicans that got caught manipulating the system. The bottom line is it's the rule of law. That's what gives us stability in this nation, is having the rule of law. And if we lose that, then we just become like all of the I mean, to me, it's a cartoon when you look at some of the other nations for the sense of justice. And sadly, it's begun to happen in our own America. He has stood up and said, no, we're going to stand on the rule of law and make sure that everyone who votes has the right to vote. And I think because of that, it's scared off some who would have tried to manipulate it. And others, they were caught and dealt with just like we're supposed to, standing up for law and order. And I think that has had a great effect here.
And you use the word bold. That's really it's really positive, and I think it's encouraging to a lot of people because we shouldn't necessarily have to be bold. I think people are looking for
Yeah.
honesty, and they're looking for um, you know, in politics, too often we've just accepted that there is a level of corruption expected among politicians, which the more we accept that, the further down that becomes a very slippery slope where we start to see people being corrupted for payouts for the lobby groups are very very powerful in Washington D.C. and they come with big
Mhm.
pocketbooks for elected officials. So how do you from your perspective, how do you ensure that you and your campaign maintain a certain level of integrity and incorruptibility, and what might you recommend for other voters who are becoming disenchanted with seeing that they don't know how to hold people accountable, and how can they be bold, as you're
Mhm.
saying?
Well, I mean, for me, it's the values that I carry. Being a pastor, and it's so interesting being in this arena. Many say, "Well, you shouldn't be involved in here." I think, listen, they can use more pastors up there. They don't need more of some of the other things that are there. But for me personally, just having those standards, not accepting personal gifts, if you just stop it right there. And being straightforward. I sat with a large group here in Central Florida that stands for the hospitality and the entertainment community. And I felt like was in congressional hearings there as they were, just questioning about what I stood for. And they got to a local tax that, thank God, was voted down. Another 1 cent sales tax that would have just made the problem further go, people, taxpayers bearing more of the burden. And so they asked me and they said, do you support this? And I said, no. I said, and they said, well, why not? And I said, well, because the constituents that I represent don't want it. And they said, well, there's a lot of us and we want it. And I just basically said, I'm not going to blow smoke. I said, I'll be straightforward and tell you what I stand for. But the bottom line is we've robbed Peter to pay Paul. We have another tax that was set forth for them that is used for something else. So I said, we have to just put the blocks back in order and then not just simply raise another tax because we've shifted it, to the side. At that moment, I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? I'm not going to get their endorsement. But to me, it doesn't matter because I'm there to represent the people who are sending me forth to serve. And you know what? I ended up getting their endorsement anyway. So I think that's just it. Sometimes when people compromise their own convictions, thinking, well, if I do this, then I'll be able to get up there and make some change. We can't compromise in those convictions. So just be bold. Stand upon those convictions. You know what? I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful church, a wonderful community. I didn't need this job for me. I wanted to do this job for my children, for our community to represent. And so, when you're not afraid to lose, you're just all in. And basically, then people can see that and read through that. So we just need to keep our integrity. And, there's a great group in this freshman class that I believe we're going to be able to make a real difference. And if you remember Elliot Ness and the Untouchables, and they committed themselves to true integrity and began to clean up the corruption. And I just feel like we're going to begin to see that. And so that's the purpose. Aside from that, I married well, and my wife would never let me get away with that. So
I love it. Personal
that's right.
responsibility and accountability, but you've got your family to also hold you to account, which is great. I've been married for 20 years myself, and I can say that I have a wonderful husband who keeps me very well grounded as well, and two children as well, which just it's for those of you who haven't downloaded my new ebook called Nowhere Left to Run: 10 Steps to Survive Tyranny Today. Go and download it. You will learn from brainwashing studies around the world. There's been a lot of brainwashing studies done in a lot of different countries, which you're probably not taught about in school, but they're scientific studies. Having a strong family is actually one of the best ways to protect yourself from brainwashing. I think if we can strengthen our families, if we can strengthen our community, strengthen our faith, I think we'll be able to see a lot, a growth in integrity, a growth in people being bold and coming together as communities. Now, you mentioned leadership. How do you see this leadership across the state being able to galvanize everyone from a local level up to the state level? Because we've got to remember, right, and this is a republic, and we have different levels of representation, and we don't want to just forfeit all of our rights and say, okay, big government, you just decide everything for us.
Well, that's what's wonderful about the rule of law, and for people to understand that we are a democratic republic, but it's founded upon the rule of law. And what we've lost and we have to regain is, what is the foundation of law? Where does law come from? And in our declaration, which is I love the Declaration of Independence. It's just an amazing document. It gave the reason why it was not just the Great Rebellion, as Britain called it, but that basically there was a true purpose, that had arisen to the scriptural level of God's law, the natural law, that was the foundation of Western law. And again, Blackstone's commentaries gave the foundation of Western law, which was the laws of nature and nature's God. Very important statement. Understanding that God is above. He doesn't take sides. He's not moved by the fallings of men. Therefore, he's a just arbiter of all things. And so when law is based upon God's standards, and we see that within nature itself reflecting the hand of God, then there's a safety and a stability for everyone. And we have these truths self-evident, that we are given these rights by our Creator. 4 times in the Declaration, God is referred to by our Creator through divine providence, and these different things. So understanding that God, who is just, has given us standards, given us guidelines within which we are allowed to make laws of men. And so when you can't get the Supreme Court together and outlaw gravity by a 5-4 vote. I mean, it's a law of God. Well, there are moral laws. There are things that everyone knows across the board and around the world. You're not supposed to murder. That's something that is known within the heart of man. Howbeit, cultures can be, they can decline even to the place where they accept cannibalism. So what would we do if our constituents said, hey, you're our representative, and we've all gotten together and we want cannibalism? Well, thank God we've got the rule of law. And so that rule of law is supposed to be tied to the laws of nature and nature's God. And so as we follow that, that's why even on the Supreme Court, Moses is there right at the top, the 10 Commandments. And there's been such a push to remove any vestige of God out of our society. Then we have no unalienable rights. Then the bottom line, whoever has the power is now in control and makes the rules. And that's not safe for anybody. So I even have conversations with atheists who I love to talk to, because first of all, I respect them as a human being, and we can have some great conversations, unless people just want to just argue for the sake of argument. I won't waste my time. But to have genuine, thought-provoking arguments. And I say, this Christian nation, because it truly was founded on a Christian nation. I said, do you realize other nations, their religion won't allow you to have those beliefs? But this nation allows you, because God himself does not force our own will. And so there is a real liberty that's undergirded in the rule of law, and it makes it safe for everyone. So I always believe that we are to obey the highest order, the highest law. So when man's law begins to take away our natural, unalienable rights, it is wrong. And we have, as the Declaration says, not only the right, but the duty to rise up and deal with those things. So again, the more educated we are as a nation, getting civics back in schools, going back to where we started, making sure that they don't take our kids by an indoctrination that removes our history and our foundation. And when they understand how America works and how our justice system is and the balance of powers, which comes right out of Scripture, all of these different things, that it's designed to protect us from an overriding government, from the king telling you not just how to live and how to worship, but basically taking control and stealing our very resources. It's the safest, most balanced system. And it came from a foundation of Christianity. It's really amazing when we know our history.
It is amazing, isn't it? And even the founding fathers themselves said that they saw the hand of
Yes.
God in the creation of the Constitution, and that it just was not possible. And I very much agree with you that without a divine law, then we are just left with man on
Yeah.
man. And who's going to win? Certainly, the socialist agenda or Marxist agenda is. There's people wanting to play God, and they've had a little bit of a taste of it in some other countries, and I'm sure they would love to get their hands on to the spirit of America. And but I'm really glad to hear what has been happening with your efforts, and I really agree that really I don't think God's hand is choosing a
Yeah.
party. Wherever everyone is, wherever you're positioning yourself now, it's a civic duty, and I think that should rise above party politics, and being able to talk to each other as human
Yes.
beings with respect and maintaining dignity, but also uh, being bold. I like that, being bold and not compromising on the values. Wise words. Thank you, Dr. Doug Bankson. Congratulations on your win and the success for Florida, but also the starting of the next journey. There is always more to be done. And for friends out there listening, please take a look at what's going on in your state. Look at what is your civic duty, not just looking at expectations on others. What are you doing in your community? What are you doing in your family? What are you doing in your locale? What do you need to do to strengthen your environment? Don't just rely on big government. Don't just rely on others and complain about others. What are you doing as your civic duty in this great nation? You have been listening to the Today with Kay show. I'm Kay Rubacek, and before you go, please click the like, subscribe, share button, all of those things you got to do. If you're listening on a podcast, hit the 5-star review button. Don't bother with any other stars because it only likes the 5. If you don't want to give me a 5, don't give me any, and I will never be offended. I appreciate that you've listened through to this show, and I cannot wait to talk with you again in the next one. Have a great week.